It is International Women's Day. Big Rig, welcoming in a very special guest to join me this afternoon. You remember her very well from MTV, and throughout the years, you've seen her all along, just in and out, commercials and shows. And of course, for a while there, Sirius XM doing the 80s on 8. And now working with me at our iHeartRadio 80 station in San Francisco, Martha Quinn. Welcome in, Martha.
Honestly, Ron, it is the best 80s playlist on the planet. I swear by it. Like a lot of times with the satellite subscription services, the music is divided up into genres. Like one channel will be new wave, one channel will be old school hip hop, one channel will be hair bands, one channel will be freestyle. But on our station where you and I work, I heard it's at 103.7. It's the best of all of the 80s. It's Lisa Lisa next to Poison, next to Whitney Houston, next to Joan Jett, next to Depeche Mode. And I think every song pops. And anytime people say, you know, oh, I miss you on Sirius XM, which I get because that's where the VJs are, my fam. You know, we're still family today. But I say, if you love the 80s, download the iHeartRadio app. It's free. And I promise you, it's the best 80s playlist anywhere.
Now it's been really cool to work with you on that station and you remember, because for me, I started really young in my radio career. So when I started, I was a teenager. So MTV for me was, I think I was 11 when you guys first came on the air. So I was the nerdy kid who was into electronics, who just had to stay up. We'd had cable TV not that long. And our cable TV company put everything on. When a satellite was new to launch, you didn't miss a moment. So you could see these things and you could see coming to life the future. Because up until that point where I lived, we had 4 TV stations. That was it. So this was like the big city. This is New York. And not knowing you, but yet feeling like we knew you in just weeks after you launched. And I mean, I remember so vividly being in junior high school and the girls who would emulate your look and start acting like you or like Pet Benatar or someone else they saw. It was just this cultural movement. And I'd never seen anything like it before. We just didn't have that. It was the reshaping of the world. And I know for you, now you were going, was it NYU where you were going at the time before all this got started? You were working there at the college radio station. What exactly was your role at the college station?
Well, okay, I worked at the college radio station. I was one of those college radio station kids. Did you do college radio?
High school. We had a high school radio station.
Okay.
So that's where I got in.
It was probably similar to you. We felt like we worked at a radio station with a college attached.
Yep.
You know, it's like, you know, we were 100% focused on the radio station. There was a group of us. We actually got the advisor for the radio station who had been a PA on the War of the Worlds, that Orson Welles broadcast where he acted like Martians were coming to the Earth and people freaked out. People literally freaked out. But so it was kind of classic in that way. But he created a radio major for the 12 of us. It never happened prior and it never happened since. We were so just into our radio station. And I did a couple of different shows, as you do on a college radio station. I did a new wave show. I did an R&B show. I did a folk show. I did jazz expansions every Sunday night. So, you know, everybody just jumps in. College radio stations are all hands on deck. And so that's what I was doing. And I worked as an intern. I don't know if you know this story, but I worked as a college intern at WNBC.
I have heard that, yes.
Oh, do you know this story?
Not the whole story, just bits and pieces from what I've heard throughout the years from people in the company. They're like, it's one of those things. She has to tell it because I know I'm going to screw it up. So I was like, all right, I finally get the real story as to what happened.
You're so sweet. So I worked at WNBC as an intern. I got the job because one of our professors that was brought in for this radio program was the assistant PD, Buzz Brindle. And so then I got to be his intern at WNBC. And the halls reverberated with the legend of Bob Pittman because he had been the program director there at WNBC. The guy who took over at that point was Kevin Metheny, who became famous in Howard Stern years for that whole reason. So, but at any rate, Kevin and I got along great. I got along great with everybody there. It was the Don Imus years, just pre-Howard. And I sat in the back alphabetizing singles every once in a while, getting Don Imus's dry cleaning from downstairs at Rockefeller Center. And one afternoon after I had graduated college, I was still working at the dorm. And I was taking the bus home to my 5th floor walk up on the Upper East Side. And it was crowded, there's a lot of traffic. And I got off the bus and I went to a payphone and I called NBC because I was right there. And I said, hey, is anybody still up there? It's like 5:30. Traffic is terrible. I thought I'd come up and hang around for a little bit before traffic died down. We're like, oh yeah, come on up. So I went up, I'm hanging around the office, and this other guy, Bert Stein, who was working at that time with Gold Mountain Records, and he was in from Los Angeles, and he was sitting in the office, and everybody's just sitting around shooting the breeze. And Bert Stein said, hey, what's Bob Pittman doing? Which I wasn't surprised by at all, because everyone knew Bob Pittman. Everybody knew the legend of the Wonderkind, the youngest program director of a major market station. So didn't surprise me at all that he would ask what Bob Pittman was doing. But what I didn't know is what Bob Pittman was doing. And Buzz, who I was the intern under, said, oh, he's doing this MTV thing. And then Buzz looked at me and said, Martha, that's what you should do. You should be a VJ on MTV. Now remember, this is July 1981. It was before that rocket blast off. Nobody had ever seen MTV. At that time, a video, if you watched Don Kirshner's rock concert, a video was like a second-class citizen. They would say, tonight, Foghat, Janice Ian, and Paul McCartney. And you'd be like, oh my God, Paul McCartney's going to be on. And at like 5-1, they'd play a little film clip. And you'd be like, what a rip. This is a rip.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney is not there. So videos were, and we didn't even know them as videos, but these promotional clips were second-class citizen to any kind of live performance. Live albums were, Wings Across America, Frampton Comes Alive, Cheap Trick Live at Budokan. Live albums, meant so much to us at that time, and live performances seemed to be the be-all and end-all of the way you consumed music. So, okay, so here it is at that time, and I'm thinking, okay, TV. He said, and I said, oh, what's MTV? And he said, oh, it's like being on the radio, but it's on TV. So I'm thinking, like being on the radio, but on TV. Well, the only thing that I could relate that to is WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yes.
And I said, oh, okay, what do I do during the records? Because I'm imagining that I'm sitting there while the turntables are spinning, and what do I do during the records? And he said, no, it's videos. Now, keep in mind, I had worked all day at Weinstein Dormitory. So I was just in a T-shirt, Keds, and shorts. And he calls Bob Pittman and says, hey, there's this girl here. She should audition to be a VJ. Bob says, she's got to come today. It's the last day. Buzz says, you got to get down there right now. I'm like, oh my God. So I hail a cab or whatever. I get down there. I walk in, same clothes I woke up in the morning to go work at Weinstein in. And I went out and they asked me to talk about a concert, which was Earth, Wind, and Fire. I talked about that, and they had me read some copy. But just sitting there and looking around and seeing, the rock posters on the wall and everything, I kind of started to get an idea of what was going on. And the other thing I did at college, in addition to not going to class because I was working at the radio station, I was not going to class because I was doing television commercials. So unbeknownst to me, those two skills. I left there and I called my brother and I said, oh my God, I think I just auditioned for the greatest thing in the world. So 2 days later, they called and said, the old, hey, would you like a job interviewing rock stars, flying around the country, singing concerts? And it's like, hello, yes. So,
wow.
Wasn't until years later that I found out that I was the least paid VJ at that time. But even if you had told me that, even if he had said right up front, just so you know, you're going to be the least paid VJ, I would have understood, because I'm like, okay, I literally just walked out of college.
Right.
So that's how I got my job. And cut to, a few years later when I'm at an 80s concert in Los Angeles, and I run into Bob Pittman, who says, we're starting this 80s radio station in San Francisco. Do you want to come aboard? So that's how I'm at iHeart 80s at 103.7, because Bob is our boss.
Yes. Yeah. He's the top of iHeart. I mean, that's it. It's weird too, because it is such a small business, because one of the guys I went to high school with, he was a senior graduating at our high school station in New Albany, Indiana, Brad Harden. So Brad was graduating as I came in as a freshman, and I took over as program director as he left. Well, he got hired there in the big city of Louisville, Kentucky, which is right next door. So when I graduated shortly thereafter, I ended up getting hired at that station with Lisa Lyons, who was the program director. And Lisa had been on the air since about the same time MTV had fired up there. And that was the top 40 station in Louisville. And Lisa was one of the female pioneers of FM radio in Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, she was huge and she was amazing. And I mean, she opened the door and was like, we're going to get you up. We're going to get you going. And I was on part-time, very short time until they put me on regular. And I mean, I just remember how cool, calm, and collected. And she was so patient. And it was like, I've been surrounded in my entire career by pretty much a female mentor my whole life, from my mom, who was very strong, had her own business, always told me, listen, you got to fight for what's right always, no matter what. So I've always had that in my mind, and it's always been fun, you know. And Lisa was just, I don't know. I always thought about things, how she looked at them, and it kind of shaped the way I would think about my future. But going back to MTV, so how old were you when you got that job?
Is Lisa still around?
She's not doing radio anymore. She's doing real estate in Minneapolis, but we're on Facebook, so we talk all the time. We get together in Louisville whenever we can. We still have our old LRS reunions. And it's great, man, because we're all still really good friends from that era. Her and some of the other, Lisa Mitchell, who worked there, just good people, you know?
Yeah.
It's been good to stay close.
Oh, that's nice.
So how old were you when you got that job there at MTV?
I was an embryo because it's 1981. I was very precocious. I was a college graduate, an embryo. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Right on. Now, you talked about how the salaries and stuff. When did you meet the other VJs? When did they first bring you guys together?
Oh, very soon after. I met the VJs within a couple of days, and it's funny, our different perspectives. I thought they were the absolute coolest things that, the coolest people I'd ever met my whole life. It was almost like your mom saying to your older brothers and sisters, she's not going to school today and I have to work, you have to babysit her. Because I thought they were so cool, and they were like, oh my God, she's just out of college. What's going on? But we instantly became a family, and still are to this day.
Now, when you, because this role developed very quickly, and the bands would start coming in, what was it like when did you feel, I'm sure I would have felt intimidated as heck, meeting all these major rock stars and being the one to bring them to the world, because that was it. We got introduced to not only your personality, but theirs as well. And as a job, as an interviewer, it's bringing that out and showing people a side of an artist you've never seen before. Did you feel disrespect, any heat like that? Or was it like, hey man, this is a giant party, we're all together, let's learn, let's work together and have fun?
When you say, did I feel any disrespect?
Did managers, because managers always tend to be in the middle, so they can kind of be condescending to people normally. They're always kind of that middle person. Don't look at the band directly in the face. Was everybody cool? You know what I mean?
No, I didn't really feel that. And especially, because when people came to MTV, there's something about cameras that makes people act kind of put somewhat of a best foot forward. My very first interview, like a couple of weeks after I started, was Daryl Hall and John Oates. And at that time, the Voices album was huge. I had it in my personal collection. And I was like, don't you think I should start with some kind of intro artists?
Right. Oh, yeah.
A little lower on the charts. But they were my first interview, which we still laugh about today.
Now, and to that effect, it's got to be really cool, because you were someone on the front line who opened up the door for female artists to take it to the next level. Because for me, as I talked about, where girls would emulate looks, like Pat Benatar was a big one. They even mentioned it in Fast Times at Ridgemont High at one point. These girls look like Pat Benatar. There was this opening of a door, but you gave them a voice too at the same time. It had to be a pretty amazing moment, meeting all of those legends and icons and helping them take it to the next level as well. Joan Jett, Pat Benatar, the list is on and on.
It was an amazing moment in time. It was lightning in a bottle. It really was. And I pinch myself every day that I was so lucky to be there.
Now, what do you, out of all of the artists you've worked with over the years, is there anyone that you still have a really close relationship to, as far as, friendship, kinship, especially from all of the ladies of rock or pop or whatever?
Not especially. To be honest with you, I'm very, very shy. And a lot of times, people would come in and you do the interview and then they would leave and that would be it. There's people that I'm friendly with. I'm still friendly with Steve Piercy from Rad. I'm friendly with, a lot of I would say pretty much anybody who was on MTV, if I ran into them today, they'd be like, oh my God, Martha, because none of us can remember if we actually met each other back in the
Right,
day.
right.
Kind of seems like we did. Like I was talking to David Coverdale, and I couldn't remember, to be honest with you, if I'd met him. And I go, David, when was the last time I saw you? And he goes, oh, Martha, it was in a sweaty club late one night. And I thought to myself, he doesn't remember.
No, that's David, man. He's one of those guys where I got to spend an hour with him in studio one night when it was him and Jimmy Page doing a project together. And they had
Oh my God.
Page. So he comes in to premiere the album in Tampa. And we had sat there for an hour, and it turned out, I think,
awesome.
3.5 hours.
Yeah.
And it was just like meeting an old relative I'd never met.
Yes.
You know? And like
so
knowing
much.
all these stories, because he felt like he knew me, and I felt like I knew him. They just suck you in that way. And
I
that
always
to
think
me,
that people from that period of time, whether they were watching MTV or were on MTV, it's like we all went to the same high school. I call it MTV High. And even if we didn't go at the same time or weren't in the same classes, we all knew who, you know, the football players were, you know, the John Bon Jovis, we knew who the popular girls at school were, you know, the Go-Go's, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, you know, we all know the same players, and we understand, the MTV generation understands each other very, very well, I think, because of that.
What do you, when you think back about that career and the things that you've done and up till now, because I mean, some of the things you do, like your wellness shot on the station, you really connect with people, but you do, I mean, all those things, you help people live better lives and do better things, be better people. And there's always been that kind compassion about you that comes across. And to me, I mean, that's been there since day one. I know, right? We all go, yes, it's the cameras are rolling. Yeah. But I mean, you've always had that about you, and it's genuine. Just, you know, talking to you personally and seeing how you speak with other people. And I mean, you've been doing your gatherings. You've been doing there for a while, where listeners.
Oh, my group hugs, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I never even thought about doing that, but those are ways in the pandemic world where you can really touch people so much more than just an ordinary average email or Facebook.
I didn't even know how impactful that would be. That I did that during the pandemic. It's on hold right now mostly because I was building my new studio, and so I didn't have a place to do it. And I felt like my family was kind of feeling like we need you a little bit right now. So I put that on hold. But I did it up until like a month ago, and I'm going to start again soon. I'm feeling it out. But I had no idea how impactful that would be, because I just turned on the camera and just go, how are you? And really that was just my way of saying, hey, how are you doing? I'm kind of freaking out. Yeah. Are you freaking out? Because I'm kind of freaking out. So it was really nice for me and for the people who were there, just to chat and see what's doing and to connect. And, you know, I did my Dry January group where we did a Zoom call, actually. You know, we did Zoom call support meetings, and it was great. It was so much fun. And that was just another way where we just connected. You know, like I said, that MTV generation, we really understand each other really well.
What would you think? I guess we would all be like Generation Z. Is that what we are? Are we Gen X or Gen Z, or what are we?
Kind. My husband always goes, "You're the last baby boomer." I'm like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm a Gen X."
Not.
He's like,
you are a Gen Xer at heart. Come on.
I'm a Gen Xer at heart.
Yes, that's what we do. I mean, it's like, it's not about age. It's about how you feel and how you move forward with life.
That's what I'm going to say to my husband next time. He's a couple years younger than me, and he's always like, "Ha ha, I'm a Gen Xer." I'm like, I am too.
That's a good one too. It's like going, hey, you do remember at some point in time here, we all have to work and live together in this harmony. Let's not go throwing baby boom around. But, you know, at the end of the day, what do you feel when you meet people? What are some of the common things they say to you, other than, I can't believe all these years later I'm finally meeting you? Those are amazing things. But is there something that resonates that you're very proud of, that you were able to convey to people? Something that they took away from you?
What has emerged to me over the years, and I think is really, really important, and I want to shout this out. Thank you for asking that question so I can say this, is the impact that MTV had. I've talked to people who have said watching MTV has helped them get through their time in the service, or people who have said watching MTV got them through family upheavals, or people who watched MTV for hours on end because they didn't feel like they connected with the people in their town, but they saw on MTV there was a world out there for them. Just how impactful MTV was to people and how much it meant to people. I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about the nuts and bolts of MTV. Like every documentary I see talks about the nuts and bolts of MTV, but I feel like nobody talks about the big story of MTV, which is how much it meant to people.
It did. And you said something that totally clicked in my head, because I remember sitting there when I would get, I just can't go to school today, Mom, because I wanted to hang out and watch videos because it was amazing. You were seeing the artists being creative. And, sure, you had your share of concept videos that went awry on occasion that artists would be like, yeah, I didn't have to control that. It just happened. But connecting with all of you was the amazing thing, because it didn't take long until we all really did feel like we knew you so personally, because you always had that honesty. Didn't matter who was on the air at the time. There was always that connection to us, like, hey, man, I'm in the big city, but I'm in your living room. We're having a good time, watching some videos. And you always gave us those tidbits, that fear of missing out moment that you just knew you couldn't step away from, whether it was a big video premiere that was coming or whatever the case may be. But, to me, I think back to like whenever the MTV Music Awards and everything like that came along, that's when it kind of started to branch out bigger. But is there any one moment you guys all did something together in your heyday that sticks with you so fondly, like that moment where you were like, we're a family? Maybe like doing a video on set, because I know all those Christmas videos you guys did, a ton of those things. Well, not a ton, but I think there were like 7 or 8 at least. Bryan Adams, and still to me, Billy Squier was the greatest one. What is that moment that you think of?
If I could recreate one day of MTV and go back to it, it would be the day we shot that Billy Squier video, because we were still so rebels with a cause. We weren't, when MTV came along, it was so mind-bogglingly new to everybody, to you watching at home and to us too. And you could see we were believers. We believed in the power of rock and roll. We believed we could make a difference. We believed in, everybody at that time was saying this will never work. Nobody will watch videos. And we were so infused with the love of what we were doing. And that Billy Squier video to me really shows that. I look at every face in there and I know what we were all feeling, which is we were all so filled with passion and dedication for what we were doing.
Yeah. And, and you guys, some of the contests you did back then, those were trailblazing moments for radio's future, for thinking outside the box and making it bigger than life. I mean, that was it.
Well, John Sykes, who works with us here at iHeart 80s, he was part of that. So yeah, the contests were wild, and MTV's logo was a game changer. Nobody had a logo that looked like it was just spray painted, and
that rough rebel look. That's what it was all about. Finally, for me, what would you say? Because I know people always ask us who's our favorite artist, and you never can pick one. It's like having kids; you just can't, because we work with so many. But when you think about female artists, regardless of genre, through time, who do you think is someone really impactful that's done maybe more than they would have ever imagined in their lifetime? Like for me, Janis Joplin would be one, because her style, her rebel. I mean, she may have not have been the most successful, but just what she did, what she embodied to me, made everyone look at her and go, she's a badass. I like this. This is who I'm going to be in some way, shape, or form.
I 100% agree with you with Janis. I think that she was the first female, not woman who sang rock songs, but she was the first female rock star. She was a rock star. You could put her up next to Robert Plant or Mick Jagger, and those guys would say the same thing. My friend Janet Joplin, Janis was a 100% powerhouse, like you could not believe. Everyone bowed down to Janis, and I think that ultimately what led to her demise was that she was very, very young, and same thing with Jimi Hendrix. It's but she was right there. She was, if there's a Mount Rushmore of rockers, she's on it, and not because she's a female. But I think in our decade, oh God, like you said, there's so many. There's Nancy Wilson, there's Grace Slick, there's Joan Jett, there's the Bangles, there's the Go-Go's. I mean, the Go-Go's did tours with Madness over in Europe that were like crazy punk rock tours. You know, those girls cut their teeth in serious punk clubs. You know, there's just so many of them. But if I had to pick one from our decade, it's probably because I just saw her on the Big Game pre-show with Miley Cyrus, which is Joan Jett. You know, when I saw her start to walk out, I was like, oh, we're going to get some rock and roll tutorials right here. She is so powerful. I was really, really amazed and delighted at her performance.
Yeah, I'll never forget, I was still a teen and it was my first time ever meeting her. And in our building in Louisville, we were in a retirement high-rise home. That's where the radio station was. It was originally bought when it was going to be a high-rise building, and it was WLRS, Louisville's radio school. We were on the 9th floor, but everything around us was all seniors 65 and up.
Oh my God, this is the premise for a sitcom.
I wish you could.
New WKRP in Cincinnati right here.
It was, because the studio was just, I'll send you pictures of it. When you see it, you'll be like, how did you guys even stay on the air? It's a mess.
Oh my God.
So I had to meet her in the cargo area to take her up the cargo elevator, because if they saw any of these people come in the building, they would freak, because they were not used to that, you know?
Yeah.
So we're in the elevator going up, and we get there, and I get her upstairs to do the interview. And the guy who was doing afternoons time was like, I need 5 minutes. I'm like, it's fine. And we ended up talking about baseball. Huge Baltimore fan, and the Orioles. And at the time, the girl I was dating, her dad, huge Orioles fan. So I happened to know something about the Orioles. Yeah. So I just started talking to her. And then the next thing I know, it's like 15 minutes later. And her manager's like going, we have to go. And I'm like going, oh, crap. So I'm like knocking on the door. And the guy's like, I'm like, you got to do Joan. It's like Joan Jett. She was on that tour with Cheap Trick back then. So they finally got her in and did that. And then I took her back downstairs. But she was, again, it's like we know each other. You just feel that commonality. There was no uncomfortableness about it. She was just genuinely like, hell yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you for being normal, you know? And that's that thing, that thing you talk about, where we are that group, where we all just enjoy each other's company and we appreciate good conversation. You know?
Totally. And Joan Jett, you know, you were saying about women who have done amazing things. You know, she started her own label. Yeah. She really, and as far as, did she go so far that she couldn't imagine? It's hard to know. I feel like she could have imagined.
Yeah.
It's like Mark Goodman once said to Madonna, oh, you know, because that's her real name. But he said, when did you become Madonna? And Madonna goes, I was always Madonna. So I think she could have imagined. You know, I think a lot of people can imagine, and I think that's part of their superpower, is they're following what they are imagining.
Right. That's amazing. Martha, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
It was so fun.
Yeah, and you know, hopefully we can do this down the road again sometime. Hopefully we get to actually see each other in person one day. I know it's coming. Yeah. But it has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I'll see you in the mixtape time.
You know it. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.